with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and today's guest is someone who I just recently became familiar with. He has been hosting these amazing events called Freedom Summit, and there's another one coming up here in my area in Texas, a little bit north of me in Dallas area. And I wanted to make sure and let y'all know about it because I am going to be there. There are several other people in this community that will be there. People like Bigtree, JP Sears, lots of people that I think y'all might be interested in coming to see. Of course, come by and say hello to me. I'm more than happy to meet with you. And today's guest is Dr. Jared Oxendorf. Dr. Jared, nice to meet you.
Erin, it's great to meet you as well. And thank you for having me on your podcast today. I'm looking forward to an amazing conversation, not only talking about the Freedom Summit, but maybe even just all things health and how to help people just get well. I listened to a couple of your episodes of your podcast, and it looks like you're doing some amazing things for your listeners. So hopefully I can just add some value to your podcast today and ultimately your listeners as well.
I'd love that. I'd love that. So, if you've listened to the show, then you know that we are just a very conversational kind of platform. I like to make sure that I get information on who people are and what kinds of things make them tick, what brought them to this space. So, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get involved as a chiropractor, and then again, most recently with the Freedom Summit?
Yeah, thanks. So to get into obviously start, I think one of the best things is, how did I become a chiropractor? My heart and joy to actually help people serve at a higher level with their capacity of what God's put inside of them. I was actually studying in school to be an orthopedic surgeon. I was accepted to a medical school down in Kirksville, Missouri. And, one of the biggest things that I looked at when I was following an orthopedic surgeon in Moorhead, when I was going to my undergrad for athletic training in biology and chemistry, is I realized that the surgeon I was following, unfortunately, wasn't the happiest person in the world. And in fact, he was almost like deterring me and telling me to go a different path, is what I felt my spirit kind of telling me and going. So one morning I literally woke up and I felt like I had this pit or this like hole in my gut. And it was like, hey, you need to do something else. And so I literally called up the Kirksville, Missouri. And I was like, I'm not coming to medical school. I'm actually going to go to chiropractic school. And there's a lot of soul searching in between that kind of conversation, but to simplify it for today, that's basically what happened inside of me. And I applied to chiropractic school, and I'd been seeing a chiropractor when I was a young kid and as an athlete going to high school and college sports, but never really understood the fundamental and the philosophy behind chiropractic until I actually started getting involved in school. And once I really dove into the philosophy of chiropractic on how God made the body and ultimately the power within the body heals the body, it just grabbed a hold of me. And that's one of the things that we try to bring to everybody that I come into contact with on a daily basis, whether it's through our practice or even in the community and the people that I serve here in Alexandria, Minnesota. Now, fast forward a little bit into practice, you start seeing all these injured kids come in. And one of our passions as far as for the Freedom Summit, we actually started off as the vaccine awareness summit is where we started off as. And so it was all about informed consent. And so as a chiropractor, seeing a lot of potentially vaccine injured kids and these moms coming in and saying, hey, our kid was injured like immediately or within days of their vaccinations, I started to dig a little bit deeper into that and have conversations and deeper conversations within the space. And that's what we started to hold these little kind of like events within my office in Minnesota about vaccine safety, informed consent. And it kind of grew and it kind of blew up, and we started having 50, 75, 100, 200 people come to our event. And then pretty soon when I sold my practice in Maple Grove, Minnesota, I moved out to Alexandria. God put it on my heart to actually put on a bigger event. And this is when we actually rented a huge space. In fact, it's a space that fits about 2,000 people. And our first year of opening it and really talking about it, we brought in Mary Toko, Del Bigtree, and we had a pediatrician here in Minnesota named Dr. Bob Zajac. We brought those three in, and we had 1,700 people in the audience. So it just filled it, and it just confirmed that, hey, there is a huge need for getting this information out there. Now, fast forward another 2 years, I was in 2018, 2020 hits, it's COVID, everything locks down. We start seeing the erosion of all of our freedoms start to slip away, whether it's our religious freedoms, whether it's our medical freedoms, whether it's just our freedoms of our autonomy of our own personal bodies. And that's what kind of grew and morphed it into more of the Freedom Summit. So it's encompassing of all aspects of freedom in today's world. And so we stand on the side of how do we inform people, first of all, of what the freedoms are that the government is probably trying to take away from you that you're not even aware of. And then two, how do you become more of an advocate or an adversary for not only yourself, your community, your family, your loved ones, ultimately the state and the people around you, so that you can just continue to hold that line and not allow these liberties and all of our rights to be stripped away, just eroded away right in front of us. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think that people are missing. It's almost like water running through a river, right, Aaron? And you see the shoreline slowly starts to erode. And you might not notice it that day. Heck, you might not even notice it that next day or the day after or a month or even a year. You might not notice that erosion, but literally after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, all of a sudden you're like, holy smokes, this river is huge now because of the erosion. And that's ultimately what's happening with, unfortunately, with a lot of our liberties and a lot of our constitutional rights right now. They're literally getting eroded away like a river eating away the banks of that river. And so we're here to just kind of stand on the side and say, hey, let's wake up, let's pay attention, let's look at where we need to hold the line, what we need to talk about with our senators, our House of Representatives, even all the way up to the governor or potentially even to the president someday, as far as like what bills do we need to do, what do we need to do, and ultimately form good partnerships so we can strengthen the movement to protect these liberties, protect our freedoms all along the way. So in a roundabout way, that's kind of how we morphed into where we are today, Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point because so often, for so many years prior to COVID, most of the actions of the informed consent movement in general, medical freedom movement, whatever you want to call it, were defensive. So we were trying to fight bills that were being introduced, for example, in California, 276 and 277, in order to protect what was already trying to be stripped away from us. And now, like with Informed Consent Action Network and Bigtree, they are trying to take a more offensive position, going after litigating very strategically and trying to bring back, for example, the religious exemption in Mississippi, I believe it is. So, those kinds of conversations I think are so important because ultimately, we would like to be on a more offensive position instead of always having to be on the defense, right? So, tell me a little bit about the evolution of, say, that perspective for you. So, as I think so many of us who have been in this conversation for a long time have seen things morph with COVID. So, what was that like for you? When did you start to notice a more positive shift with regard to people talking about informed consent, people talking about, hey, there might be some injuries happening from some of these medical products?
Yeah, and I love how you frame it in a way of defensive to offensive, because I think a lot of the mama bears out there and the moms that have seen vaccine injury and even the dads, right? But it's usually the moms that are stepping forward in the family that are coming out, which is we're seeing a kind of a shift in men coming forward now and ultimately speaking out. But predominantly it's been the mama bears really standing up for their families. And I think that, you're absolutely right. They were on the defensive, and we're on the defensive and probably till about 2021-ish. And then we start to see all the harms and all the vaccine injuries and everything that's coming out from COVID. COVID, in a way it was devastational, but in a way it was a blessing. We can look at it as a blessing because it woke a lot of people up. And it started to almost bring people into the space saying, hey, this is what we've been screaming about with not only, these vaccines with the COVID vaccine, but all vaccines in general, that they need to be looked at in a deeper route as far as for what they're doing, the potential harms, the things that they're causing, just having a better non-biased type of exploratory conversation in and around them. And so I think right around 2021 was probably where you started to see a lot of those people wake up. And even in 2020, there's a lot of that almost like resistance, that pushback, where I think that people that were even on the fence with vaccines, even people pro-vaccines, well, they didn't like being told what to do as far as the mandate with the masks, being shut out of places, not being able to go someplace, not being able to visit their grandmother or own mother or whatever it may be in a nursing home. I think that's when people really started to wake up and said, hey, what's going on here? Why is the government doing this? And they started to dig deeper and actually start to learn how to do a lot of the research themselves. And now you're seeing a lot more people come into that space as far as asking more questions. And so I think that, it was right around that 2020 time, 2021 time, where we saw people go from a defensive to more of an offensive type of state. Now you fast forward another, 2 years, President Trump and all of his, electorals and a lot of his appointees get into office. And now it's really starting to pick up momentum as far as, seeing that go on the offensive of whether it's foods and dyes and colorings, not just vaccines, but a lot of these things that are potentially causing harm in people's lives. And so I think that right now you have a short window and people may or may not realize it. But I really, truly believe that we're in a 2-year window, maybe a 3-year at the most, of making the most impact that we possibly can in the natural health field. And so holding events like what we do, it tries to bring that community together to strengthen the foundation, and ultimately continue to keep the momentum going. But I really believe that going on the offensive is great, but then continue to keep the pedal to the metal for the next 2 years to make as much change as we possibly can is very, very important right now, Aaron.
Yeah. So, what do you hope for people who maybe are newer to the conversation? What do you hope that they take away from these events?
Well, one is I hope that they just, continue to take away like the perspective of like, hey, maybe there is something else out there that I need to look into, right? And when they come to our event or any event like a health freedom event, they probably get fed with a fire hose at first. And so it might even be overwhelming. And so the biggest thing that I hope that people, come to the events with is, one, an open heart. Two, they come to learn, right? With a listening ear to not just form judgment, but to listen with an ear, to have discernment in that conversation, to say, okay, maybe I should look into these things, and maybe I can look into these other things, and somewhere in between there's truth, right? And so we just pray that people come into our events with an open ear, an open heart, and ultimately just receive and discern after they move forward. And yes, we want them to understand, like, hey, there's a different perspective and a different narrative than what we've been actually kind of brainwashed into believing by listening to the media or radio or TV and propaganda that's out there all around us. Unfortunately, we don't always see the other side of the coin. And so teaching people about the possible detriments of vaccines or foods and chemicals, or where are we potentially losing our liberties and our constitutional rights, I think is very important. And now, taking that next step, though, and giving them action steps or solutions to that is the next step in that as well. So not only showing them where the problems are or where maybe the holes in their lives may lie, but also how do you provide some type of solution and some type of remedy, basically, to help them along that path and course of life as well.
Yeah, so I think this is really part of this bigger conversation that, has been happening in a lot of different circles. And the MAHA movement, the overarching goal is to try to move the needle on as many things as possible in a very short period of time. And frankly, I don't know if that's going to be possible. And unfortunately, the scary part about that is we don't know, we've got Kennedy in there now, but once his term ends, we don't know the direction that things might take. And so, I think really getting to the heart of establishing a solid plan moving forward is really imperative. So, where do you see the natural health world fitting into this overall plan? Because I know a lot of people who have complained about, oh, well, Kennedy's only focused on getting dyes out of foods, and that's, low hanging fruit, or he hasn't pulled the COVID vaccines from the market completely. And, they want movement much, much faster than I think, we can expect from large governmental organizations. I just don't see that typically is their MO. So, where do you see the natural health world being able to press forward and create the most movement right now? And what looks the most promising to you?
Great question. I think that, as people continue to look into what, Secretary Kennedy is currently doing, I think it continues to open their eyes. Now, some families, they might say like the most important thing to me is going to be focusing on the nutrition, right? The foods, the colorings, the dyes, the exposure to that. Now, people that have been in the movement, they've already been aware of that, right? So they're already past that step. And so they're already looking for what's the next solution? Where do I need to go next? Where people just coming into the movement, they might not know what the foods, the colorings, the dyes, the pesticides, the chemicals, all those things are ultimately doing inside them to their cells, their hormones, just their bodies in general. And I think so that's a great place to start, because anything that you put on your skin, anything that you put in your mouth, obviously it's going to affect your body in some way, shape, or form. And so we need to know, like, what is that thing made out of? And ultimately, what is it going to do to us? And so I think that's going to probably be the biggest shift that you're going to see is probably within the food industry, people making, that healthy solutional or that healthy change themselves. And after that, I think Secretary Kennedy is doing so much. He's exposing some of the chemical stuff. He's exposing some of the environmental toxins. He's exposing so many more different things. And, to your point, people are so quick to, pass judgment, or we want things to happen so fast because that's a society that we've been trained to live in, right? We have the attention span. Our kids have the attention span of about a goldfish, about 7 seconds right now. And so we want things so fast and so rapid. But unfortunately, like you said, with big government and everything else, it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't change that fast. And so just to get the win of having that COVID vaccine, not necessarily mandatory, right? But it's still out there, but now it's not mandated. They don't have to take it. It's not pushed, just like the Hib vaccine, right? So the hepatitis B vaccine that's not on the childhood schedule anymore. And so now we're starting to take ground. Yes, it's still there because I think that's a great play, so give people choice, right? Because not everybody's going to move towards the, I don't want to vaccinate thing. But there are going to be people that say, I still want it, right? That's just what they're ingrained in. And maybe that's the point in where they're at in their life. And that's the choice that they can make for their family. And that's all we're asking, right? Is like, hey, you do you, I'll do me. I'll make the choices for my family, whether I want to put chemicals and everything into them. Now, I'm not going to stop speaking out and telling them the dangers about the vaccines or about the chemicals and everything else, but it's their right as a parent to choose what is best for their child. And so you allow people, and hopefully we don't necessarily have to pass judgment on people, and we don't have to attack people, but how do you have a good conversation? Because anytime that we attack, you never can ever go anywhere in that conversation. And so I think that, moving forward with the natural health movement, you have to be able to have good conversations, right? Good discerning conversations with somebody, and not attackable conversations, because anytime you attack, defenses go up, and you're never going to get somebody's morality to change when you're having an abrasive conversation. And so, learning to meet somebody where they're at and then having a good dialogue can ultimately help people understand, like, where do you stand? Where do they stand? And then ultimately, how do you just continue to expose maybe your truth or their truth and listen, right? And that's what we should be doing as humans, is how do we sit and listen to each other, have great conversation, and then, make great decisions for our families based on wherever we are. But, the natural movement, I think, is gaining more and more, momentum every single day, especially with younger families, younger parents. You're seeing more of that green grassroots type of movement. You're seeing them turn to more sustainability, more organic things. And so it's great with the younger the younger families. You're seeing a great change. It's the population that's like the 50s and 60s and older that you're seeing more resistance with, and I think more headway, because they're so ingrained and so indoctrinated into pharmaceuticals and what their medical doctor tells them. Right? They put their medical doctor on a huge pedestal. They think of them as a god almost, and then it's all like, okay, I'm going to do anything that you tell me to do because I believe your word is so much truth, right? And so I think that hopefully we'll start to see some of that generation continue to wake up and ultimately continue to ask more questions about why are they getting sick? Why is more Alzheimer's? Why are we having more MS? Why are we having more, type 2 diabetes? Is that potentially related to our food, our chemicals, or even the poisons from the vaccines that we're putting in our bodies, right? Those are just things that people need to continue to ask more and more questions to as we see more disease and dysfunction continue to take lives and take precious years from people's lives as well. So I think we're in a great place right now, Aaron, as far as the natural health movement. People are definitely starting to see more. And I think Secretary Kennedy is doing an amazing job as exposing a lot of things right now.
Okay, so where do you personally wish he would place more energy?
Um, I think that, right now, I think that if we're going to look to, I think a lot of times we think that, okay, we can do things immediately right now as far as the vaccine stuff or the COVID things or the foods. Um, I think that if we could do things with our kids at a younger generation, we're going to see more changes in the years with health and wellness. And so it comes down to our educational process. I think it comes down to our schools. Yeah. Could he go into and just revamp the whole vaccine thing and say nothing's mandatory anymore? Yeah, sure. But you're going to have an uproar. You're going to have a revolution. You're going to have all sorts of things with people that really stand on that standpoint. But if you can educate somebody and if you can give them the rights or the wrongs, if you put this into your body, this is potentially going to happen to you. If we can really start teaching that at a younger level, you're going to see amazing things happen 10, 15, even 20 years down the road. So I think the education of our youth, kids in school, elementary, high school, where they're starting to really get into their morality of their life and they're forming a good foundation of how they're going to raise their families and their society someday. I think that's where you make the greatest impact. Unfortunately, a lot of us, we've already made up our mind, right? It's hard to change an adult's mind if they're ingrained in that and they don't want to open their ears, they don't want to open their heart, to a new way of thinking. Sometimes, parents won't open because if they hear the truth and they have a vaccine injured kid, or if they have a kid with psoriasis or eczema or allergies, and they know that they potentially made that decision to actually cause harm on their child, that could cause a more of a mental distress within that parent. So some parents, I think that maybe they're just blinded to it because they don't necessarily want to admit or agree with that they potentially made a decision that actually harmed their child, right? Not saying that that's, potentially what's happened, but at the same time, there's some parents that I've had conversations with that feel horribly bad because they're starting to wake up to that and realize that they did this to their kids. Their kids didn't have a choice in that. They made that decision for them based on the knowledge that they had. And so I think that the more that we educate, the more that we can teach young kids, the more that we can teach the population, the more people can make truly informed consent decisions. And that radically changes not only in the vaccine world, but it changes in the way that they're eating. It changes in their mindset. It changes in how they treat people in and around them. So it's that educational foundational piece that I think is huge that's missing, where we can make some big impact for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I hear a lot right now this whole idea of like, well, Kennedy could do X, Y, or Z with the stroke of a pen. And it's, I think, very short-sighted. And for people who have been in this conversation for a very long period of time, like you and I both have, I think we are much more measured about our approach and much more strategic and understanding that that's not really the way to get things done. That is the strategy of, if you will, the opposing side, for example, with what happened in California, them taking away essentially all exemptions because, for those of you who are unfamiliar with some of the bills that passed in California, initially they took away philosophical and religious exemption and then made it extremely difficult to get a medical exemption because the doctors who were writing them were limited to, I believe it was six medical exemptions per year. But essentially, if you were writing six medical exemptions per year, those doctors were forced to go in front of the medical boards and, potentially stripped of their licenses. So there's they come to these conclusions very with a heavy hand, and I think the way through this from our side of the conversation is, like you said, education, teaching the younger generations, what health actually looks like instead of, these um, food guide pyramids and the idea that we can put cereal on the food guide pyramid and sugary cereals and put healthy grass-fed meats or something at the at the very bottom or top, I guess, but whatever.
Right.
And giving this idea that like somehow we should be eating far more cereal than we should, grass-fed meats, which is just insane to me. But here we are. So
Well, you got to remember, Aaron, too, is like we just talked about how there's a 2-year window potentially to make this change, right? With Kennedy in there. Well, if we educate and we educate properly, it doesn't matter who's in there, right? Because people now can make a more of a informed consent decision on whether they want to do something or not do something. And so, the education piece is so, so, so important. And so whether they're, getting education from, freedom events and freedom summits, whether they're getting it from a certain advocate, whether they're listening to your podcast, there's so many, health, podcasts out there and everything else too. But at the same time, we need to educate, not just listen and be told what to do from our media standpoint. And so that's why I love, podcasts like yours. I mean, it's incredible. The truth that we can get where 10 years ago, there wasn't this. And so that's another blessing in COVID. You think about all the podcasts and all the things that came out. I mean, it's just such a growing movement for educational processes in this natural movement.
yeah, I think that's really important. So conversations like this are happening at events like yours on, podcasts, obviously. And I think, I don't think that would have evolved without COVID. I'll just anecdotally, as a young mom, my son's now grown, but, as a young mom, I was terrified to tell people about my stance, about the fact that I had had a home birth, about the fact that my child was not vaccinated. All of these conversations were so taboo, and to the point where I got kicked out of moms groups, simply because I expressed an opinion that was contrary to, conventional thinking. And, so I do think the beauty of all of this is that we have opened the door to a more in-depth and nuanced conversation around these, medical products, around, whether or not public health can force you to, do certain things or act in certain ways. Those kinds of conversations, I think, are imperative moving forward. And I think a lot of times, people get caught up in this idea that like, oh, COVID is over, and so we shouldn't continue talking about it. And I think now is the perfect time to continue talking about it, because that's the only way we make sure that we kind of put the final stamp on this conversation, so that, it's not something that occurs again, because I think most people at this point are realizing and recognizing that, whether you want to believe that this was a bioweapon that came out of a lab in China, or that Fauci was, some evil mastermind, or, it really doesn't matter. We know that there were a lot of mistakes that were made, and we know, undoubtedly that there was government coercion, that was trying to keep us, locked in our homes and not communicating with other people, censoring speech, all of those kinds of things. So the more these conversations can happen and as freely as possible, the better.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, one of the things that we try to encompass is all of that. And we have, we just actually, if you look at the wellnessmyway.org, if you look at the website and you see the flyer with all of our speakers on there, we actually just added another speaker, Peter Mickelvena, from London. He's going to fly in from London. This is the guy that has been on the forefront of digital ID and freedom of speech, and also, the invasion of Islam into Christian communities. And so we're bringing Peter in to really expose a lot of what's happening in Europe, because it's only a matter of time, literally a matter of months, if not years, before digital ID and a lot of that stuff starts to take place here in the United States. Now, thank God we have a good administration as far as for boundaries and about people coming, as far as immigration coming into our into our country now. And I'm all for people coming into our country. It's great. It gives a good melting pot, but come here legally, right? But there's a lot of things that are happening that need to be discussed that are happening in Europe with Islam that's going to be ultimately happening to potentially our Christian nation, our Christian foundation here in the United States. And so I think that's going to be a conversation that people do not want to miss as far as for digital ID, freedom of speech, how they're imprisoning people in Europe right now, even going back for things that they posted potentially back in COVID and back years. They can get arrested or fined for things that as far as quote unquote hate speech that they were putting on like social media. And so there's some scary things that are just still continuing to come down the pipeline. And some people will sit oblivious to it and they'll turn a blind eye to it. They'll be like, no, that can't happen. Our government would never do that, or whatever it may be. But those that are going to be prepared are the ones that are going to be ready for it. And ultimately, how do you stand up and draw a line in the stand so that we can push back and resist against that when that does try to happen here in the United States? And so hearing the information, discerning the information, getting informed consent, and ultimately coming up with an action plan so that we can stand against it is going to be very important as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I look forward to hearing that talk. But can you tell us a little bit more about who else will be at the event and what kinds of topics are going to be covered?
Yeah, awesome. So you got Del Bigtree. Obviously, Del Bigtree brings so much. He's a dynamic speaker. Anything from the ICANN network to their lawsuits to some of his new movie that he just won like a huge award for. So Del will be there. We have Mary Bowden, Dr. Mary Bowden. She's going to be talking a lot about just how do you continue to stay engaged in around the COVID conversation. She's huge on getting senators and representatives to kind of step out, even medical doctors to come out and continue to stand up against the mandates. We have Sayer G. Sayer is going to, hopefully give some not only health and natural remedies and solutions, but he's also going to be telling his story that I don't think a lot of people know about, on how he was silenced during COVID, how he was literally defamed, and how he was literally cut off of all social media aspects. I mean, literally erased from social media. And so he's going to be telling his story. We have Bradley Freedom coming up to talk a lot about maybe the digital aspects of things as far as for digital currency with crypto. Getting away from kind of the Federal Reserve and federal context of things. Avilio Silvera, he's going to be talking a lot about like a sharing ministry. How do you exit kind of how do you fire your healthcare insurance basically and move towards a more of a maybe a shareable type of insurance. So again, just getting away from kind of your typical health insurance and getting into more of a sharing type of ministry. We have Pastor Ben Graham. He's in the Department of the Interior. He's the faith director at the White House. And so it's going to be awesome to hear Pastor Ben. He just brings such a great message on faith and religious freedom. Dr. Joel Bohemia, he's a chiropractor out of Naples, Florida. He actually has literally experienced kind of the ability to come across our borders. He was in Canada visiting family, and he has a work visa in the United States, and they did not let him across the border to come back. And so he had to get his work visa all straightened out. So he's back in the country legally now, and practicing down in Naples again. But he's going to be talking about, he's awesome about vaccines and about natural things as far as for parents and young parents, and even us as adults. Like, what can we be doing to stand on the standpoint of that side of health? Right now, we are in conversation with A.G. Paxton as well. Technically, we've heard through one of our team members that he is verbally committed, but again, just waiting that full confirmation as far as like a contract with him. So he's going to be obviously talking about all things Texas and what to watch out for. He's doing some amazing things in the state of Texas right now. So really interested to hear from him. Obviously, Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Sherry, is absolutely incredible. She brings a huge Christian aspect to her faith and natural healing remedies within her practice. JP Sears obviously adds quality comedy, kind of enlightens the conversation, because let's face it, this conversation can get very serious. It can get very heavy, and we like to lighten it up with with some faith and some comedy as well. And JP is one of probably the hardest freedom fighters that I've met in a long time. So even though he stands on the side of comedian, he's not a doctor. He's not a, trained physician or anything like that. But I tell you what, this guy has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to our health and religious freedoms that he stands for. Dr. David Erb he's a chiropractor in Texas and Dallas there. And he is going to bring, again, just what can we be looking at in the inside? How do we start testing? How do we start looking at things? How can we be just go on the offense of making sure that we don't end up with disease, or if we do have disease, what can we do to start reversing it and start changing it? Pastor Joshua Fierenstein, he is going to bring an amazing message. He is an amazing evangelist from stage as far as as far as our faith and health freedoms as well. Leah Wilson, she's Stand for Health Freedom. So if your listeners have not heard of Stand for Health Freedom, please go and check out Stand for Health Freedom and Leah Wilson and what she's doing. Their organization literally lets people know, if you're part of their email list, they send out an email list of things that are coming down your state board, as far as for your state governance, I should say, as far as through your House of Representatives or through your Senate floor, some of the bills that are coming that may be stripping away your health freedoms or your religious freedoms. Their organization is the one that is looking for those and then sending out basically notifications like, hey, notify your senator, notify your representative that this is not something that we stand for, that we do not agree with this, and ultimately continue to speak out and voice your message to whoever your representative or whoever your senator is. As a constitute, you have the right to do that, right? You have the ability to call your House of Representative, your senator, and make that change, with them as well. They also, every voting year, they come out with a who do they support? So they vet these different candidates and say, these are the people that are going to stand on the side of health and religious freedom. These are the people that we recommend that you vote for. And so they do a great job at literally vetting and making sure that we're putting the right people into office so that they stand on the side of liberty and our constitutional rights. And then lastly, virtually, Asim, we're going to have him kind of Malhotra coming virtually. Unfortunately, he can't go back and forth from London. He's going to do a 15, 20-minute virtual talk that we'll play, but everybody else will be live in person. And then last but not least, we're actually in contacts and in talks right now with actually Secretary Kennedy. And so we're hoping that he's going to be able to make an appearance and speak with everybody at the Dallas event as well.
That sounds amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about the details. Where do they go to register to buy a ticket? And how do they make sure that they join us here?
Yeah, perfect. So they can go to wellnessmyway.org/remedy podcast. That's probably the best place that they can get it if they're listening to this podcast. I'm sure that you'll be attaching a link hopefully for them so that they can click on the link below and they can go directly right there to actually get their tickets. So that'll be the best place. Again, it's wellnessmyway.org/the remedy podcast. And then just follow the link. It's the easiest way to do that to get your tickets to join us in Dallas. It's January 17th. It'll be an all-day event. We will literally begin the event probably at 8:30 in the morning is what it's looking like and what it's slating like because of all the number of speakers. We'll probably go till about 6:30 at night. And then after that, we're going to do there's a bonus event called America's Revival. And so again, standing on the side of our Christian faith and religious aspects of things, there's going to be an amazing America's Revival that evening as well. So it's going to be an incredible day. We're looking forward to Dallas, especially being from Minnesota. I can't wait to get out of like minus 20 degrees in January and come down to Dallas. Hopefully you guys aren't having one of those ice storms or things that you've had in the past in January or February. Hopefully it's like 80 degrees like it's going to be for the next few weeks here. So that'd be absolutely incredible. Looking forward to some sunshine in Dallas.
Well, no promises because the key to Texas weather is if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. All right. Dr. Jared Oxendorf. So we on the podcast, I ask every single guest our 8 rapid fire questions. These questions are designed to give us a little bit more insight into who you are and what makes you tick while you're in this movement and the things that you enjoy. Are you ready?
Put me on the hot seat, I guess. Let's go.
All right. Number 1, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Wow. I would probably say a listening ear and an open heart to things. I think that the heart heals very, very well. And I think our mindset, if we walk in love and joy, it's amazing what that does for your health every single day. So probably a different answer than what you get from most people. It's probably an herbal remedy or something like those things. But I think that your mindset and the way that you walk and your attitude every day will bring either health or disease to your life.
Amazing. All right. Number 2, tell us something most people don't know about you.
I'm a huge introvert. People typically think I'm a huge extrovert because of the events that we do. But honestly, I get into a crowd and I'm just not, I'm like socially awkward almost. And so, I'm an introvert probably as a person, but once I get into the crowd and once I get going, I come out a little bit, but I'm an introvert probably by nature.
You might be surprised to learn that I am as well, a complete introvert. All right, number 3, if I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
By far, it'd be Bethel Music, Carrie Job, and it would be The Blessing. Such an amazing song.
Awesome. All right, number 4, what is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Dark chocolate and wine.
Nice. All right, number 5, what is the most influential book you've ever read?
Atomic Habits by far. I think that the habits that you can do and the simple things that you can do on a daily basis will lead to success or failure in your life.
Wonderful. All right, what does the word revolution mean to you?
Revolution. Drawing a line in the sand and holding a position and revolting against maybe the things that we don't morally or ethically think are right. And so I think that when we use our voice, when we use the stance of things to hold against whether it's a population or a belief that we don't necessarily agree with, that's a revolution. I think a revolution can do so many different things and it can mean many different things to many different people, but ultimately holding a position and ultimately pushing back for the things that you stand for and you believe in.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
That's a good one too. I think that, remedy is something that fixes something. And it might not necessarily be, a physical ailment. It might be just something that, brings about healing or, and to maybe a cause or addresses an underlying problem in somebody. And it can be different things, right? It's not just symptoms in people that remedies will actually heal. Remedies can be for many different things in people's lives. And so I think it's not just a quick fix. I think it can be definitely something that addresses underlying dynamics or some type of situation in somebody's life.
Amazing. And lastly, if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
I think, like we've been talking about all day, Aaron, I think it's, come with an open ear and an open heart and not be so quick to judge. not be so quick to tear down, not be so quick to maybe pass judgment on somebody, but be able to listen and have good conversations with somebody is ultimately how we make positive and real positive change in this world.
Yeah, and I would argue it's the only way. So,
Amen.
all right. So, go ahead and visit wellnessmyway.org/remedy podcast for information on this amazing event, the Freedom Summit coming up. Dr. Jared Oxendorf, it has been my pleasure. And I will meet you January 17th. So,
Looking forward to it. And again, thanks, Erin, for having me on your podcast. It's been such a blessing. And I know that you're really inspiring and making differences in many people's lives across the world. So thank you again for hosting this podcast, for having this podcast. And I pray that I added some value to your listeners today.
absolutely. Well, thank you for all that you do as well. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate you. And hopefully, we will see you in January in Dallas at the Freedom Summit. Take care, everyone.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.